The first thing that stayed with us was not the fall, or the stitches, or the police report. It was the sound of a voice memo played in a quiet room, the kind of message that changes what a family can ever be again. We're revenge sins. And Sophie Turner's story matters because it isn't about a stranger hurting her. It's about watching the person who raised you in every way that counted start speaking like someone else. This is where she begins. I'm Sophie Turner. I work as an occupational therapist in Madison, Wisconsin, and my job is to notice the small things people don't realize they're doing. The way someone favors a shoulder, the way a hand tightens before a sentence, the way a body goes still when it's waiting for permission. Rachel used to be the one who gave me permission to breathe. Sunday breakfast was ours. Same booth near the window, same battered menu, same waitress who slid coffee over like she'd been doing it for years. Rachel was already there when I walked in. Hair pulled up, sleeves rolled, smiling like she'd been waiting all week. Hey, Soph. Sit. You look tired. I'm fine. I dropped into the booth, exhaled, felt my shoulders finally come down. Long week. Rachel reached across the table and tapped my knuckles. The old habit from when I was a kid, and she was trying to tell me, without words, that the world wasn't going to swallow me. Then the bell over the door chimed. Calvin walked in like he belonged in every room. Not loud, not flashy. Clean jacket, calm eyes, that measured way of looking at people like he was listening before they even spoke. Rachel stood. You made it. He leaned in, kissed her cheek, and his hand settled on the middle of her back. It looked normal. It didn't feel normal. Sorry, Calvin offered, pulling into the booth beside her without asking. I had a call that ran long. Rachel brightened, like the apology had been a gift. It's okay. We just got here. Calvin's gaze moved to me. Sophie, Rachel talks about you constantly. I nodded, polite. Nice to see you again. Rachel started telling him about a patient story from my week, something I'd only shared with her in private. Halfway through, Calvin's fingers pressed into her back, subtle and firm. Rachel's posture changed immediately, straighter, quieter, like she'd been corrected. I watched it the way I watch a rehab patient protect an injured joint. Automatic. Conditioned. Rachel laughed, a little too fast. Anyway, it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. I pushed, gently. It bothered me. Calvin smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Babe, you don't have to carry other people's emotions. Healthy couples operate as a unit. You don't need outside noise. Rachel's mouth opened, then closed. Right. Yeah, that's true. A brief stillness sat on the table, like someone had turned the volume down on my sister. We noticed how Rachel's eyes flicked to him before she spoke, like she was checking the temperature of the room. I stared at my coffee until the surface stopped shaking. Rachel tried to recover. Bright voice again. Calvin was telling me about his nonprofit project. It's exciting. Calvin's hand stayed on her back. Mine stayed in my lap, clenched tight enough that my nails left marks. Of course it is. I managed. You've always liked fixing things. Rachel's smile faltered. Just for a second. I'm not fixing, she said softly. I'm building together, Calvin added, his voice smooth as glass. I swallowed. Something in my chest shifted, small but permanent, like a door clicking into place. If you'd like to keep up with stories like this, subscribing helps us stay close to the ones that don't get told out loud. Rachel reached for her mug with both hands, and I realized she was holding it the way someone holds a railing when they don't trust the floor. Calvin started showing up everywhere after that brunch, but never in a way that felt loud. He didn't announce himself. He slid in, adjusted, made room for himself like he'd always been there. Rachel began canceling our midweek check-ins with careful explanations. We're just slammed right now. Or, Calvin has a deadline and I don't want to leave him hanging. She said we a lot. Not in a dramatic way. Just enough that it stuck. One evening, She stopped by my apartment with takeout containers balanced on her forearms. She looked tired, not worn out, focused tired, the kind that doesn't complain. "I brought pad thai," she said, already moving toward my kitchen. "Extra sauce." I remembered. "You didn't have to. I wanted to." She set everything down, then paused. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, thumb hovering, then turned the screen face down. "He's in a mood," she offered lightly. "Non-profit board stuff. You know how it gets." I didn't. But I nodded. We ate on the couch. She talked about Calvin's work, the way he framed his projects, the people who didn't get how much pressure he was under. Every sentence felt practiced, like she'd already said it out loud earlier that day. "He believes in accountability," she said, pushing noodles around with her fork. "He pushes me to be better." "Does he ask what you want?" Rachel smiled, quick and automatic. "He knows what I want." Her phone buzzed again. She didn't look this time. Her knee bounced once, then stilled. Later, when she stood to leave, Calvin called. She answered on the first ring. "I'm heading out now," she said, already grabbing her coat. "No." "I ate." "Yes." "I brought leftovers. I'll warm them up." She met my eyes and mouthed sorry while listening, nodding into the phone. Her voice softened, the way it used to when she talked to me after a bad day. I know. I won't be long." When the door closed, my apartment felt bigger, quieter, like something essential had stepped out with her. A week later, Calvin joined us again for coffee. He slid into the seat beside Rachel and set his hand on her thigh this time. Casual, familiar, possessive in a way that looked affectionate if you didn't know where to look. Rachel started telling a story about work. Halfway through, she trailed off. "Sorry," she laughed. "I'm rambling." Calvin leaned in. "You're doing fine. Just get to the point." She did, faster, smaller. I watched her shoulders pull in. Just a fraction. The OT part of my brain clocked it immediately. Protective posture. Subtle. Learned. Calvin turned to me. Smile polite. "She's lucky to have someone who cares so much." Rachel nodded along. I stirred my coffee until it went cold. When we stood to leave, Rachel hugged me longer than usual. Her arms were tight. Her voice, barely there. "Don't overthink things." "Okay, I'm not." She didn't look convinced. As they walked away together, Calvin's hand found her back again, guiding her through the doorframe like it was second nature. I started noticing the changes the way I notice compensation patterns at work. Not all at once. In pieces. Rachel stopped interrupting people. She used to jump in, finish thoughts, talk with her hands. Now she waited, paused, looked sideways before continuing, like she was checking a cue only she could see. We met at a brewery near the lake one Friday after work. Calvin was already there, seated beside her, arm draped along the back of her chair. His fingers rested near her shoulder blade. Not quite touching. Rachel smiled when she saw me. "You made it." "Barely," I answered, sliding into the chair across from them. Traffic was awful. Calvin nodded, polite. "Fridays bring out the worst drivers." Rachel laughed softly. Too softly. "That's true." She started telling me about a project she'd been assigned. About halfway through, Calvin shifted, his fingers pressed once, light but deliberate. Rachel stopped mid-sentence. "Sorry," she said, breath-catching. "I'll just summarize." "You don't need to go into all that detail," Calvin added calmly. "It stresses you out." Her shoulders eased. "Right. Yeah." She finished in 2 sentences. Clean, efficient, nothing left over. I watched the way she held her glass, both hands wrapped around it, elbows tucked in. Protective. I'd seen that posture on patients who'd been corrected too many times. Later, when Calvin stepped away to take a call, I leaned forward. "You okay?" Rachel nodded immediately. "Yeah." "Why you seem quieter lately?" She shrugged. I'm just being more intentional. About what? About not oversharing. She smiled, but it didn't land. Calvin says not everyone needs access to everything. He says that he believes boundaries are healthy. I do too, when they're yours. Rachel's jaw tightened. She picked at the label on her glass. You always read into things. I notice things. It's kind of my job. She looked up then, eyes flicking past me toward the patio doors. You notice problems. The words stung, mostly because they weren't hers. They were sharp in a way Rachel never was. Calvin returned, sliding back into place like nothing had happened. His hand found her back again. Everything good? Rachel nodded once. Yeah. Sophie was just checking in. Calvin smiled at me. She does that. Rachel leaned into him slightly. The movement was automatic, practiced. As we stood to leave, she hugged me, quick and careful. Don't worry so much. I'm not worried. She stepped back, already turning toward him. Good. They walked out together. His hand guided her through the door, gentle and exact. I stayed behind long enough to finish my drink, watching the condensation slide down the glass, thinking about how easy it is to miss control when it looks like care. It didn't happen all at once. No big announcement. Just small shifts that added up. Tara mentioned it first. We were at the gym, stretching on the mats after a class. She rolled onto her side, propped on one elbow. Hey, she started, casual but not quite. This is probably nothing, but I figured you'd want to know. I waited. Rachel said you've been struggling lately, emotionally. My hands froze around my resistance band, struggling how she didn't go into detail. Just said you've been under a lot of stress and maybe reading into things. Tara hesitated. She said Calvin's been encouraging her to set firmer boundaries with you. I stared at the floor, the rubber mat suddenly too bright. Did she say that to you? Tara nodded. At Jenna's birthday? I didn't push. That night, my phone stayed quiet. No check-in from Rachel, no follow-up, just silence that felt deliberate. A few days later, Rachel agreed to meet for coffee. Just us. She chose the place, a small cafe near her office. When I walked in, Calvin was already there. Oh, I said, stopping short. I thought this was Rachel stood, already apologetic. I'm sorry. He was nearby. It just made sense. Calvin smiled, polite as ever. Hope that's okay. I sat anyway. The conversation stayed light at first. Work updates, weather. Nothing real. My chest tightened with every sentence that didn't matter. Finally, I leaned forward. Rach, can we talk for a minute? Just us. Rachel's eyes flicked to Calvin. He gave a small nod, like permission. She exhaled. Okay. I'm worried about you. Her shoulders stiffened. I knew this was coming. I'm not attacking you. I just feel like you're disappearing. Calvin's voice slid in smoothly. That's not fair. Rachel nodded quickly. It's not. You've been projecting a lot lately. Soph, projecting what your anxiety, your need to control things. Her words sounded rehearsed, stacked neatly. It's exhausting. My throat tightened. Since when do you think I'm controlling? She glanced at Calvin again. Since it started affecting my relationship. Calvin folded his hands on the table. We've noticed a pattern. You frame concern as care, but it crosses boundaries. Boundaries we used to have together, I said quietly. Rachel shook her head. You're making this about you. Something cracked then. Not loudly. Just enough. I miss you. Her face softened for half a second. Then it closed again. I don't have space for this right now. Calvin stood. This feels unproductive. Rachel rose with him. We need some distance. For now. For how long? She didn't answer. She just picked up her bag and followed him out. We watched them leave from the corner table, from our side of the room. It looked calm, reasonable, two adults setting limits. From where I sat, it felt like being written out of my own family. Later that night, a message came through. One line from Rachel. Please respect our boundaries. No emoji, no nickname. Just that. We've seen this moment before. The quiet one, where the story turns without anyone noticing. And then it was just me, my phone on the counter, and the sudden understanding that I wasn't the sister anymore. I was the problem. Jordan Price did not reach out the way people usually do. No long message, no explanation up front, just a single line that landed in my encrypted inbox late on a Tuesday night. I think we should talk about Calvin. I stared at it for a long time before responding. My first instinct was to delete it. My second was to forward it to Rachel. I did neither. We met 2 days later at a small cafe near the courthouse. Jordan was already there, sitting stiffly, hands wrapped around a paper cup like it was anchoring him to the chair. As an occupational therapist, I noticed his guarding posture, shoulders hiked, elbows tucked in, a textbook physiological response to chronic stress. "You're Sophie," he said when I walked up. His voice was careful, like every word had been pre-approved. I nodded. "You're Jordan." Jordan did not rush. He took a breath and leaned back slightly. "I dated Calvin for 8 months, 3 years ago. Long enough to lose everything." My chest tightened. Why reach out now? Because I saw the engagement announcement, and because the pattern looked familiar. He set his phone between us. He isolates first, always gently. He uses terms like emotional maturity and boundaries to cut you off from anyone who sees through him. He told me I was spiraling whenever I questioned him. Jordan continued. Then the financial alignment started. He convinced me to consolidate our credit. When I finally left, I found 3 accounts I never opened. One had a balance of $5,000, another was nearly $12,000, and you didn't report him. He's a ghost. Sophie. He uses your identity to build his non-profit shell companies. By the time I saw the 100% drop in my credit score, he had already moved to another state. Jordan slid a small silver thumb drive across the table. "I'm not asking you to believe me. Just look. It's all there, the tax ID numbers for his fake charities, the civil filings from 2 other victims, and the life insurance policy he tried to make me sign where he was the 100% beneficiary." I stared at the drive. It felt heavy, like a lead weight. "He doesn't want Rachel," Jordan whispered. "He wants her credit score and her clean reputation to wash his past. If you don't stop this, she'll be the one facing the fraud charges in 2 years while he vanishes with the payout." As Jordan walked out, I gripped the thumb drive so hard the metal edges bit into my palm. The ground had shifted. This was no longer just about a sister's jealousy. This was a crime in progress. Rachel was supposed to meet me at the 4 o'clock hour on Wednesday. Her idea. The Lake Mendota boat landing offered a neutral, public space quiet enough for a difficult conversation, yet open enough to feel safe. She had messaged that morning. 4 o'clock. The pier near the marina. Just us. I arrived at 3:30. The wind off the water was sharp, cutting through my thin jacket as I paced the wooden slats of the dock. To my left, a weather monitoring station sat perched on a pylon, its small security camera swiveling slowly. I focused on that lens, a habit of a woman who was trained to look for objective data. 4 o'clock came and went, at 4:10. My phone remained silent. No apology. No running late text. At 4:15, a shadow fell across the pier, but it was not the person I was waiting for. Calvin. He looked surgical. No jacket despite the chill, hands tucked casually into his pockets. He stopped exactly 5 feet away, a distance that felt like a calculated tactical choice. "Rachel couldn't make it," he said. His voice was steady, perfectly modulated. My chest tightened, a physiological spike of adrenaline. She didn't say anything to me. She didn't want the confrontation. Calvin replied, stepping 1 foot closer. "She's exhausted." "Sophie." Every time you reach out, her heart rate spikes. She asked me to handle this. That doesn't sound like her. It sounds like a script. Calvin's smile thinned. A micro-expression of contempt I caught instantly. You're an occupational therapist. You think you can diagnose a relationship like it's a broken wrist, but you're blind to your own pathology. You're the contaminant in her new life. Where is her phone? Calvin. His eyes flicked toward my bag, where the silver thumb drive sat tucked in a side pocket. I help manage her communications. It's a boundary we agreed upon. A 100% transparency policy. It's 100% isolation, I countered, my voice rising. I know about the Seattle fraud filings. I know about the $5,000 credit line you opened in Jordan's name. The mask finally slipped. His jaw tightened, and the peaceful consultant vanished, replaced by something cold and predatory. He didn't shout. He just became a wall of looming pressure. Give me the bag, Sophie. You aren't going to ruin 10 months of work over a few civil disputes. I yanked the strap tighter across my chest, stepping back. My heel caught the raised edge of the concrete marina steps. Don't touch me. You're unstable, he hissed, his hand shooting out with the speed of a strike. He didn't push my chest. He grabbed the strap and jerked it, a manipulative move designed to throw my center of gravity off. Stop, I shouted. A runner, Mara Klein, slowed down 20 yards away, her face twisting in confusion. Calvin saw her and released the strap instantly, but the momentum was already gone. My shoes skidded on the damp, mossy concrete. Time dilated. I felt my right heel lose contact with the earth, the air rushing up to meet me. There was no more wood, no more concrete. Just the terrifying, silent pull of gravity as I fell toward the lower landing. The drop wasn't far, but it was wrong. My heel caught the edge of the dock and my body pitched backward. For a split second, I thought I'd regain balance. I didn't. I hit the wooden step below hard, shoulder first. A flash of white. Then the back of my head clipped something solid. The world tilted sideways and stayed there. Air rushed out of my lungs. I tried to sit up and pain shot down my arm so sharp it made my vision blur. Above me, Calvin's face appeared at the edge of the dock. Calm, calculating. You slipped, he said evenly. You need to relax. Footsteps pounded closer. Hey, is she okay? A woman in running shoes came into view, breath uneven, ponytail swinging behind her. I don't know, Calvin answered quickly, already kneeling beside me. His hand hovered near my shoulder, not touching. She got upset. She lost her balance. I forced words out. Calvin leaned closer, voice dropping so only I could hear. Don't do this. The runner crouched down on my other side. Ma'am, can you hear me? My name's Mara. I'm Sophie. I managed. My mouth tasted like metal. Mara's eyes flicked to Calvin. What happened? She came at me. He replied, shaking his head like he was still processing it. She's been under a lot of stress. I tried to calm her down. I did not. I said, the words thin but steady. Calvin's expression shifted to something like sadness. You were yelling. You grabbed my jacket. Mara looked between us, uncertain. Let's just focus on getting you checked out. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling an ambulance. Calvin exhaled slowly. That might not be necessary. It is. Mara cut in, already speaking to dispatch. My shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat. I tried to move my fingers. They responded. Barely. Calvin stood and stepped back a few feet, running a hand through his hair. From the outside, he looked shaken, concerned. The performance was almost perfect. He glanced down at me again, voice low. You're going to make this worse than it needs to be. Stay away from her. Mara snapped without looking at him. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Calvin pulled out his phone. I need to call Rachel. The name cut deeper than the fall. Don't, I whispered. He was already dialing. Rach, he began when she picked up. His tone shifted instantly. Fragile. There's been an accident. He paused, listening, then continued softly. She got aggressive. I didn't want to tell you, but it's escalating. My chest tightened. That's not true. Mara leaned closer to me. Try not to move. Calvin's voice carried just enough for me to hear pieces. I'm okay. She slipped. I'm fine. A pause. I know. I didn't want you stressed. The ambulance pulled up near the path. 2 paramedics hurried over with a stretcher. As they lifted me, the sky spun above, pale and indifferent. Calvin stood back, hands in his pockets now, watching like an observer at the edge of a scene. Mara touched my arm gently. You're going to be okay. I tried to focus on her voice, steady and real. Calvin stepped closer once more as they secured the straps. This didn't have to happen, he murmured, just loud enough for me. You could have walked away. The doors closed between us. Through the small rear window, I saw him standing on the dock, already typing on his phone. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and stale, overheated air. My right shoulder was immobilized in a sling, secured tight against my chest to manage the anterior dislocation. A deep, throbbing ache pulsed beneath the bandages, a constant reminder of the 3 concrete steps that had nearly broken me. Along with the shoulder, the doctor confirmed a mild concussion and a laceration on my temple that required 6 stitches. My phone sat on the tray table. Screen dark. Then it pulsed. 1 notification. Then 2. I didn't open them immediately. As an occupational therapist, I knew the body's sympathetic nervous system was already overwhelmed. My heart rate was likely 110 beats per minute just from the sight of her name. It wasn't a call. It was a voice memo. I pressed play. Rachel's voice filled the sterile silence, shaky and rehearsed. Soph, I don't even know how to say this. I heard her ragged exhale. Calvin told me everything. He showed me the scratches on his arm. He said you lost control, that you grabbed him and wouldn't let go. He said you were spiraling again. My throat constricted. Spiraling, a word Calvin used like a scalpel to dissect my credibility. He's been trying to keep the peace. Sophie. I asked him to go there because I couldn't handle the emotional volatility anymore. I love you, but we need 100% distance. Please, don't make this harder. The message ended. No love you, no nickname, just a clinical finality. A nurse entered to check my vitals. Pain level, she asked, adjusting the blood pressure cuff. 7, I whispered, though the physical pain was secondary to the hollowness in my chest. After she left, I replayed the memo. I listened to the cadence the way Rachel used phrases like toxic attachment and unhealthy fixations. It was a 100% match for Calvin's vocabulary. He hadn't just taken her phone. He had overwritten her mind. My phone buzzed again. A text from Rachel. We are looking into legal restraining options if the harassment continues. Then, the final blow. A group message notification. Rachel had added 4 of our closest friends. We're asking everyone to respect our boundaries. Sophie is struggling with her mental health and needs professional help, not confrontation. I turned the phone face down. The betrayal was systemic. Mara Klein, the runner from the dock, knocked softly and stepped in. She looked at the phone, then at me. I gave the police my statement. She said quietly, I told them he didn't look like a man who had been attacked. He looked prepared. The word hung in the air. Prepared. I realized then that the fall down the stairs wasn't the beginning. Calvin hadn't pushed me first. He had pushed my sister into a world where I no longer existed, 1 lie at a time. It took 3 weeks for the digital evidence to force the truth into the light. Mara Klein's witness statement had provided the initial cracks in Calvin's narrative, but the footage from the marina's weather station was the final blow. The police asked me to come in once my shoulder reached 40% of its normal range of motion. I watched the video 2 times. There it was, grainy but undeniable. Calvin stepping into my personal space, his hand lunging for my bag, and the deliberate shove that sent me backward. It wasn't an accident. It was a calculated removal of a contaminant. Rachel came to my apartment one night after the detective showed her the file. She stood in my doorway for 5 minutes before she could speak, her protector's armor completely shattered. "I saw it," she whispered, her voice barely a thread. I stepped aside, allowing her into the space she used to anchor. She didn't sit. She just paced the living room, her hands trembling. "I told our friends you were unstable," she said, staring at her feet. "I let him manage 100% of our wedding finances. I even signed a change of beneficiary form for my life insurance policy. He told me it was future planning, but I see it now. I was just an asset to him. You were a target." "Rachel," I said quietly. "He specializes in rewriting reality. I'm so sorry. Soph." "I know." We stood in a silence that felt heavy and unfamiliar. Calvin was facing 3 to 5 years for assault and the fraud charges Jordan helped uncover. But the legal victory felt distant. We started small after that. 1 hour of coffee a week, no talk of the trial, just rebuilding. It wasn't the bond we had before. It was thinner, more careful. But as an occupational therapist, I knew that a bone, once broken and reset, carries a different kind of strength. I used to think being the protected sister meant I was safe. Now I know that the only real safety is the truth you refuse to let someone else rewrite.